that feels like a good time to move on to the Phoenix Suns, who are just like their off seasons all of a sudden become like uncomfortably eventful to where you didn't want it to be. But their key free agents, obviously DeAndre Ayton, restricted, Bismack Biyombo, non-bird, JaVale McGee, non-bird, and also Ish Wainwright, who is just like super intriguing as like a almost PJ Tucker type player. He is a non-bird restricted. They also have Cameron Johnson, who's extension eligible. I'll be shocked if he gets one because Robert Sarver's super cheap, and it seems like they want to keep their options open in terms of trades. Their best spending tool, if they're going to use it, is the mini MLE. They like sneakily have a ton of holes they need to fill all of a sudden because you need a third ball handler and creator, one who can run lineups without Chris Paul and or Devin Booker, but maybe also one who's big enough to play with them. And Cameron Payne did not check that either of those boxes as capably as he did the season before. You need to figure out what's going on with Ayton. And if you are signing and trading him, is paying JaVale McGee, who I assume you can keep because a 120% raise off $6 million should be more than enough to keep him for a season. But like, is McGee and like Bismack Biyombo, like without, like, is that adequate filler if DeAndre Ayton is leaving? And then I also feel like, I know they have Shamet and I know they have guys who can hit threes, but they need like a high volume, like 3-point shooter. They could also use some additional rim pressure. I know it's not supposed to be this huge concern, but I do think it's kind of come back to bite them now on a few different occasions. I'm still high on them if Chris Paul and Devin Booker are going to be there, but the DeAndre Ayton restricted free agency path looms over all this. And I think it ultimately is just going to determine the course of their offseason.
Yeah, I think that's obviously like item one on the list. Although like in terms of finances, Devin Booker being eligible for the Supermax extension now is like,
yeah, that's a good point.
It's a big deal too. But yeah,
you offer that, by the way, right? I'm not fucking around. Like you offer Devin Booker the Supermax.
Yeah. Even if you're the Suns and you are not habitually, jumping at the chance to spend, like you can't, I mean, like you just can't mess around. I don't think. I have like no questions about Devin Booker being in the class of player that's worth that going forward. So for Ayton, since we're doing this the day after the draft, I think like the Pistons freeing up money, but then also drafting a center that they really liked kind of, I don't know what that does for Ayton's options in terms of the offer sheets he can get. It feels to me like, so if you had to guess, I think the two most likely options are sign and trade. And I think the Miles Turner for Ayton works, even with base year compensation issues. I'm fairly sure my math is right on that. Or he's going to come back at less than at a number he doesn't. That's less than that 5,177 that he's been eligible for forever. So I think if I'm the Suns, my goal is to sign Ayton to a long-term contract, and you can trade him down the road if you want to. He should theoretically be more valuable, retain his value at the very least if you've got years of team control over him. If you're an acquiring team, that's going to matter. But I don't hate the Miles Turner sign and trade, especially if Ayton is going to be the version of Ayton you're going to get. In addition to like the kind of scary, he's playing video games all night. I don't know how much stock you put in that type of thing, but in addition to that stuff, like if he's just kind of, whatever the closest thing is to a malcontent without being like outwardly like mutinous, like that would kind of suck for the Suns next year. If he's got some money, but not enough to his liking, and you're just not getting the best version of him. That's not ideal if you're trying to win like immediately. So I don't know. That's the toughest situation. I'm curious, how do you see the Ayton thing shaking out if you had to like rank the likelihood of outcomes?
I think he's most likely to leave now, and I wouldn't have said that a few weeks ago. Detroit getting Jalen Duren, I think, in the draft hurts his market. But if I had to say the most likely team that I think ends up poaching him, or there's a sign and trade framework there, I feel like it's San Antonio. And it's been very clear that he wants to go there, or his camp wants him to go there. They will have cap space. We've seen DeJounte Murray linked to trade rumors now. I don't think if you're getting DeJounte Murray in a Ayton sign and trade, you are also giving up a lot of other stuff. And let's make that clear. In addition to that, I would explore that though, because like DeJounte Murray is not that much older than DeAndre Ayton, but if the Spurs are shifting timeline, like I originally thought it would be Josh Richardson, Jakob Poeltl, the number 9 pick would be the ceiling on their offer. They could also just sign him outright if they wanted to. They could get to that number. but you're worried about the Suns have to match. If no team is going to engage and sign it, and he just signs an offer sheet, you match because you can't let him walk. I don't care if it's a max deal, you match. But I do expect that DeAndre Ayton is going to be signed and traded. If I had to pick the team, most likely it's the Spurs. The Pacers were a good one. And I do though wonder if Miles Turner, yes, he's cheaper in the interim. How much of a cheaper number are you getting him for than Ayton moving forward? Because he, from eight, it doesn't even seem like the Suns want to pay a center 20 plus million, at least under their current salary structure. I don't think there'd be as big a drop off defensively as some people believe with Turner to Ayton. He's better on the perimeter than I think people give him credit for. And he is a better straight up rim protector. DeAndre Ayton's probably just can make more complicated head on a swivel reads. The offensive drop off, I also don't know how big that would be because Ayton never truly explored the self-creation. He's going to be a better offensive rebounder and has better touch around the basket. So I think his skill set is more expansive. And I know Miles Turner fancies himself like a post-up artist, and when he's really not. If I'm Phoenix, I think I'd rather pay Ayton, match an offer sheet, than get just Turner. What else is a part of that deal? And that's not just again, the immediate drop-off, I don't think would be that stark, if at all. I just really don't trust them to be and then we're going to keep Miles Turner as long as Sarver is running that franchise anyway. Are there any other teams that spring to mind as a potential Ayton destination to you?
I mean, so even though what I just said about the Pistons, I don't think drafting a rookie center necessarily precludes you from going after just signing Ayton to an offer sheet and seeing what happens. Cause clearly you can move Duren if you need to, it's just, there are options there. I don't think you should rule them out. But the other thing is the base year compensation stuff, if you're talking sign and trade, is really tricky. There are not a lot of guys that would make sense in terms of how the money would fit and would Phoenix actually want them. And I don't know if any of the other cap space teams, So short answer is there aren't a lot of teams that jump out. And that's why I think the Turner thing, again, I don't want to keep harping on it, but I think actually it's possible that because of the way Phoenix operates, the fact that they might lose Turner in free agency after a year is more of a feature than a bug, because you can save the face of hey, look, we got this guy for Ayton for a year. And maybe that's as wide as the window is going to be in Phoenix with Paul's age. And then it's we couldn't keep him. It just didn't make sense. And I don't know, there's sort of, it seems like a Phoenix thing to do potentially is that's actually a plus that you get someone that makes you look good in the moment. Ayton didn't want to be here. You save some face, and then, you maybe contend again, or maybe you go all the way, who knows? Turner adds a lot. And then he's gone. So, and then you've saved the money. You didn't have to spend a maximum. I don't know. So it's hard to know with how Phoenix operates. We did kind of gloss over the other concerns you mentioned, but I actually, for the playmaking, get to the basket stuff, I think if you have Booker and Paul, you can stagger them a little bit, and you just hope you get good campaign instead of bad campaign. And then maybe Shamet makes some shots. I just, I don't know. I actually think Jalen Smith would kind of make a lot of sense on this team.
Oh, come on.
It's my favorite subplot. Okay, we're going to talk about Jalen Smith real quick, because I was looking at the numbers. And so granted, it was 20 some odd games, 500 minutes with Indiana last year, but he was good. He was a good player in Indiana. And it's just insane. He's played, so that 500-ish minutes is half of his total career minutes. So for half of his career, Jalen Smith has been a good player. So he's going to come up a lot as we go through who should teams be looking at as free agent centers, because I just I don't understand what happened. Why did Phoenix give up so early? Why, he clearly has some skills. I don't understand. So I just want to mention that Jalen Smith should be someone they really wish they still had.
I can't bring myself to look at Jalen Smith would make a contribution on this team. He did have a good spin in Indiana, but let's be semi-realistic here.
I'm on Jalen Smith Island. This is official. The flag is planted.
I do agree with you that you don't prioritize. If you're trying to get the ball handling upgrade with what you could spend, this has to be I say ball handling, just a playmaker, shot creator upgrade. It has to be via trade, would be my guess. Are there any free agent targets that actually stand out that make sense to you for this team? I thought Thaddeus Young, I don't want to keep throwing that name around, but if they wanted to downsize, and it seems at points they did that with Shards a bunch before the season, since he was obviously injured, could you go that route? I don't think you could get Chris Boucher for the mini MLE, although he would be perfect for this team too. And it's also tough to understand because their needs shift a lot. If DeAndre Ayton's back, you're focusing on, if you bring back JaVale McGee, done. Like your center rotation is whatever. You could, I guess, have more plug and play wings if you wanted to get involved in some of those sweepstakes. I just don't. What's weird about this team is they'll be so good if they run it back. I don't look at the free agent targets that are realistic for them and think that's the one that they need to go after.
Right. Like, unless, I think PJ Tucker is going to be out of the price range. I think Otto Porter is someone they should at least look at. Boucher was on my list. I think Bjelica, like, if you're not sure what you're going to get from Dario Saric after the ACL, I think Bjelica replicates a lot of that. And I think, although if you're, I don't think you could justify spending an exception on Bjelica. So you'd be looking at the minimum. And if the minimum is the offer, I don't know why he takes Phoenix's over the Warriors, for example, or just any number
playing
of
time, maybe, depending on if Ayton's there or not.
Yeah, sure. He could have a bigger opportunity, that's for sure, because he'll be like, depending on what Looney does, fourth on the center depth chart for the Warriors. But I think Bjelica is going to have multiple, like multiple offers at the minimum, but maybe a few above that. So, it's tough. I agree. Look, they won more games than anybody last year. Chris Paul probably had COVID in the playoffs, and that was like the biggest problem they had. So this isn't a team that needs a huge amount of help. I think you just hope campaign is, 2 years ago campaign, and you figure out the center stuff.
Just to put names on this, the three that I would like to see them get as sort of jack of all trades, like could fill different holes depending on what the lineup is that night or who has it going. Either of the Martin twins. I know their games are a little bit different, but like just guys who are going to be able to hold their own on defense. They shot just well enough on modest 3-point volume last year to get going. And I think that the secondary passing that both of them provide, maybe you trust Cody Martin there a little bit more than Caleb. I think Cody might actually be more gettable too, because the Hornets are cheap. And so if you're giving them mini MLE and restricted free agency, do they match? And then Amir Coffey, I sort of alluded to him before. They gave him more ball handling responsibility in LA last year than I think a lot of people realize. And he was able to work really off the dribble, do some pick and roll initiation. Those would be the names I'd probably like to see them just go after. But everything is just contingent upon what happens with Ayton, and if he's leaving, what are you getting back for him?
Just a couple others. I think, he's not a playmaker, he'll come up a lot. Daniel House, I think, is someone just like you throw him out there. He's, basically was Utah's best defender down the stretch wing defender. And we haven't talked about Victor Oladipo. I don't know what he's going to get, but like, if you're looking to take a shot, assuming
non-taxpayer, do you think that's unreasonable for him?
I think that's probably, I don't think he's getting the full mid-level, right? Like, you just can't do that. So yeah, he's someone that it's an upside play. You're hoping that the further removed he is from the injury, but then that also cuts against like one of my great tenets of NBA player acquisition is you never take the guy that just sort of like looked way better in Miami, because leave Miami, it doesn't.
Yeah, so rule Caleb Martin off your board too as well, right?
Oh no, yeah. If he stays in Miami, I'm all in on Caleb Martin. But if he leaves, I think he just turns back into what he used to be, which was a guy who had to sign a two-way.
Very quickly, because we're over on the Suns, is DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix to start next season? Yes or no?
I'm gonna say yes, because I think the Suns will just match and then worry about trading him at some point down the line.
You're not as spicy as Stephen A. Favale, who predicted that he's leaving.